This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations, and I'm here to talk to you about a couple different background techniques using, of all things, plastic bags from the kitchen. I've got a couple different ways we're going to do it. I have a little bit of a surprise today. You can kind of see a pink blanket here. Let's see. This is Pixie. This is why I was so stressed last Monday and why I'm stressed this Monday. Last Monday we were leaving right after I finished my Facebook Live to go pick her up. She is 1.5 pounds and about 8 weeks old. And she's been keeping me up at night, but she's been lots of fun. Let's see. Today we're going to be working on a couple background techniques. Like I said, we're going to be using some kitchen bags, and this is, I always forget what side. This is one of them. That's done with markers. Doesn't look like it, huh? And this one is done with plastic bags and ink pads. Hopefully she'll sleep through this presentation. You can kind of see her little nose. So like I said, we're going to be working on these cards. This is done with the Magical Mermaid and markers. And this was just a background that I did with our ink pads using kind of the same colors idea, but a little bit different. And it can be layered under, you know, any number of things. I just happen to have several mermaids I was playing around with, coloring their tails, trying to figure out the way I liked it. And it was done with Stampin' blends, of course, and I keep saying that I need to find a way to use my markers. And of course, one of the ways I use my markers is to take and use one of our stamps already on the block, and then to use the brush end of the our Stampin' Write markers to individually ink certain sections of the stamp. And this allows me to get a multicolored image to stamp with. And so I'm just brushing with the brush tip of my markers. And there's my muted background. Okay, sorry, I don't know what's going on with that mic. So frustrating. Okay, so I'm gonna just move this out of the way. And then I can heat this with my heat tool. I can dab it with a little bit of tissue, just something to pick up the extra liquid that's coming off of it. Another thing I did with the other one, in order to flatten it out, if you notice it all here, keep from dripping, it kind of warped. And one of the ways we can keep that from warping too badly is we can come to the other side and put some moisture back here. And so it doesn't matter that this has color or doesn't have color, because all I want is to add a little bit of moisture to it, and that makes it even out, because then it puts moisture on both sides of the paper. And so then it's the same thing when you're heating. You're going to want to heat from both sides of the paper. When we're drying this, and also when you're using embossing powders, it's best to heat from both sides, because it keeps the temperature even, and this is keeping the moisture even. But that's what it's doing, is it's kind of just messing with the paper a little bit. And that makes it even. So there's our background. And that was just with a plastic baggie and some markers. Another thing is that was one baggie technique. The other one is to just take a baggie, this is just a regular sandwich baggie, or you can even use plastic wrap. But then I'm just going to pull out a couple of my ink pads. And then I'm just going to wad this up, and I'm going to dab it into the ink pad and then onto my paper. And that's kind of a dark color, so I don't want much. Then I'm going to come back with another section of this, and I'm going to come in with some Highland Heather. The first one was a gorgeous grape. And then, let's see, we were using Pool Party. Use some Coastal Cabana. And there you have it. Quick, easy, simple, and a little bit different. You know, I'm always looking for ways to do a background or a card and have it be a little bit different. You'll notice there's a big splotch of purple in the middle. Maybe I didn't want that much, but once I place the mermaid over the top of it, it doesn't look quite so big and purple in the middle. So that allowed me to not cover it all up and still have some. So that's one idea. Like I said, we can put these cards together. I had card bases. Here we go. So again, I've just got an 8.5 by 11 cut in half and then scored in half. So this is 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4. And then I can just take these backgrounds that we made. Sorry, I ran out of my little tape. I have an order showing up any day now. So there's that one, and then I'm going to come in with some dimensionals and just pop this gal up so she looks like she's floating. Thank you. It's funny, I kind of go into stores and I look at things and I call them Coastal Cabana and Gorgeous Grape, and I give them Stampin' Up names at the grocery store and at Walmart or whatever. So I guess it's just the way I'm trained. So there's our mermaid. And of course we can do an inside. These are 4 inches by 5 1/4, which is the same size as the layer on the outside that we did that with. Here's my stamp set. We're using Magical Mermaid. So I love this little stamp that has the sand on it, because in the sand is little crabs and sea creatures. So I'm just going to stamp that a little bit across the bottom with some crumb cake. Could also use Sahara sand. And then let's see, let's go Old Olive and do some seaweed. Okay, now I want this seaweed to not be as tall. And so what I'm going to, and I don't want it to be in my sand. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a scrap of cardstock, and I'm going to cover up my sand so that I can stamp this lower and have it look like it naturally was shorter. So then we're just ready for our inside sentiment. So we'll ask them to have a magical birthday. And let's do that in Bermuda Bay. And then it's all ready. Put some snail adhesive on there, and there you go. So there's one card. And then we still have this other one. This is starting to get dry. And it flattened out very nicely. And then once we put the adhesive on it, it'll definitely be flattened out. So we'll grab another card base. And again, this was watercolor paper, and then I just used my markers to draw on the plastic baggie, and then I got it wet. And then I took the piece of paper and just laid it down on there to pick it up. And so I can just move this around. It's because it's the second time, there's not as much ink on there. So I'm getting a much lighter background, but you can see how it still kind of works. And I can always add more ink and more water and darken this up a little bit, but that's how we got this background. And then we can come in with the other mermaid. And some Stampin' Dimensionals. And then I have some little gems. I don't know if they're gems, but they're little clear, losing the name of what do we call them. So here's our mermaid. Oh, they're kind of like, you could use enamel dots. There they are. The epoxy droplets. So there's frosted and clear. And then I'm going to add those to the background with my Take Your Pick tool. I love this little thing. It's got kind of putty in the end, and this allows us to come in here and pick these up and place them wherever we want them on our card front. And I just wanted to place them around, make it look like bubbles within the water. There we go. Let's see. So I'm going to leave the corner open so that I can stamp the sentiment if I decide to later. I'm going to leave it kind of blank because I happen to do a lot of cards kind of like this where I will decorate them up and have them ready to go, but if I don't know if this is going to be a get well or a happy birthday or, you know, whatever occasion I may be using it for, I can leave the sentiment off, have a whole stack of them, and then when I'm ready to send the card and I know what I need it for, then I can add the sentiment. So just another idea. Let's go back to the seaweed here. And that was Old Olive. Bring in some crumb cake and our sand again. So there you go. So there's the two cards that we created today. I went ahead and made one a birthday card with the inside. And then this one I'm leaving blank so that I can add the sentiment when I decide what I'm going to be using that card for. So I hope you enjoyed these two techniques and that you give it a try. It's really easy. It's funny how we can take regular household items and use them for our stamping, which is kind of fun. If you've watched before, you've seen that I also used press and seal to make a floating frame technique. There we go. So thank you for joining me today. Again, this is Pixie. She's one of the reasons I'm frazzled today. But Pixie and I will see you next week. Remember, Mondays at 2:30. Bye.